Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Cannici. Welcome to Valley Sports Rewind. Today, we're going to have Sean Morse on, and the reason I'm having Sean on again is we did something new the other night, this past Tuesday, between Ansonia and Stafford in the Class S quarterfinal game. And basically, we did a live audio feed, a play-by-play, and it was really neat. So I brought Sean on to kind of talk about it. And Sean, good to have you on again. Talk about how the idea was developed.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think this is something, like everyone knows, we've been doing a lot of different things for almost, I think in March it'll be about 2 years.
Right.
But this is one of the ideas we had, and we just kind of threw this together last minute. I think it took us we had an idea for a long time, but we threw it together maybe like a week before the game. And, we just kind of put it together and, I kind of, talked to the schools and stuff and we threw it together.
Sean, one of the big things has been, I think we both agree, is we were big fans of when they used to do the Cable 10 games in the Valley. That was a great thing. Liz Kennard did a tremendous job putting all that together for many years. And I think that was kind of the thing that we want to try to do, is kind of restore that a little bit in the Valley. And it's very hard to kind of do that with a regular station because, you're talking about cameramen, you're talking about production people, and, people don't want to really touch that anymore. So this is kind of a way to bring it back in a small way, but I think it's really something that a lot of people want to see again.
Yeah, I think the important thing to let people know is that although it may not seem like it at times, we're doing this out of the good of our hearts. We're volunteers. We're doing it for the good of the game and the good of the kids and stuff and the people that played in the past. But yeah, we don't have a huge budget or anything like that, and it is in its infancy. So we asked people that as far as the live feed of the games go. So, it might be a little, the audio might not be the greatest right away, but, give us time and we'll get it figured out. But most people seem to enjoy it. The other night we had over 100 listeners.
Right.
Not all at once, but, as a whole, we averaged about 10 or 12 listeners at a time. So I think it was great. We had one guy in South Carolina, I think it was Ed Tedosio's son.
Right.
Whose son plays for the team.
Cody Tedosio, yes.
So it was a great first run. I haven't heard anything bad about it yet. We'd love to hear people's feedback, but yeah, that's where we're at the moment.
The thing I notice is the support that we were given. Ansonia supported us in doing this. Coach Tommy Brockett was really supportive. Said anything you guys need. The superintendent was very supportive. The CIAC, they gave their blessing. So, there really wasn't any, we didn't really, nobody said no to us or anything like that. And basically everybody was on board with it. And I think that's important too, because you have to have the support of everybody or there's no way we could have done it the other night.
Definitely, yeah, and I think we're both very grateful for that. I think people know we're doing this for the goodness of the kids, We're not doing it for any other reason than that, and to promote the game and stuff like that. But it's very good to have the support of the community, and we want to hear what people think about it too. And if you also the games are at least the game that we did with Ansonia versus Stafford, East Windsor is actually archived on our YouTube channel, which is where they can get the game
right.
live feed. It's the Ansonia Derby Classic Football on YouTube or Facebook. You can search that. We'd love to hear your comments on there as well.
Right.
As well as on valleyindy.org.
Right. Now let me ask you this. What was the most challenging thing for you the other night doing the game?
Definitely the most challenging thing was trying to produce it and announce it at the same time.
Right.
So I'm sitting here, I'm monitoring the feed, making sure the feed is still live, and I'm announcing the game with you. We had you do the play-by-play, which I think was key, because I could do the color, and then
right.
And then, I was kind of like monitoring the feed, updating the score, and making to see how many people were listening. And then, like you're doing a play-by-play, waiting for me to
Right. Yeah.
to say something, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to say something here.
Right.
So, but it was challenging. I think overall it was a success. There's always room for improvement, but I think overall it was a huge success. I don't think it ever dropped. It may have dropped on some people's ends if they had, not the best internet connection. But
Right.
overall on our end, there was consistently 10 listeners at a time. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And, one of the things that, I got a little nervous when we were doing it the other night because the weather was not the best. The conditions were terrible. I mean, it was pouring probably up till game time. And, that was good that at least the rain stopped during game time. But you always kind of worry about that that's going to cause issues, the feed and things like that. Do you think the weather played a part in anything the other night or not really?
Not from a technical standpoint. Luckily, I purchased our own Wi-Fi network to take care of that. Other than carrying equipment from the parking lot to
right.
back and forth from the press box, there really wasn't any major weather issues as far as our stuff's concerned. I think for the players, it was definitely an issue. That field was sloppy, and I feel for Sean Raleigh and his crew.
Right. They did a nice job on the field, though. They really did.
Yeah.
What was cool, too, the other night is we had a lot of people in the press box. You had Bobby Barth and a few people in there. And, they were kind of supporting it and joking around in the background and things of that nature. And it was really cool because everybody helped everybody the other night. If we didn't know a certain player's name, they would tell us. And if they didn't know a certain number, if they couldn't see it, they could go by what we had said. So, I think we helped each other out the other night. And I think that was the fun part, too, is just being in the press box with, guys who lived to watch Ansonia forever.
Yeah, I think that was helpful for us. We've known Bobby for a long time, and we had some other people there that were helping us out. The guy from, I don't know if he was a reporter from the Stafford people or what, but he helped us out a little bit with some rosters. And
right, he was very helpful, yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely helpful to have people we knew in the press box. I think if we had gone to another town where we didn't know someone, where we didn't know some people, it would have been a little more difficult, a little less comfortable. But I think we would have pulled it off, and I think we're doing good so far. People seem supportive of what we're doing, so.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there was any negative reaction. A lot of times people, they kind of tend to bring up the negatives, but the positives were pretty much all I heard from it, and I really thought the reaction was great.
Yeah, it really was, and it's great to hear even all the stuff we've been doing. It's great to hear all the positive feedback, and then we love to hear constructive criticism as well.
Right.
To see what we could do better. Or where areas we're lacking, and we'd love to hear that right on our online on our appropriate pages.
Right, and what was interesting was the game wasn't a great game. It was a blowout. At the end of the first quarter, Ansonia had already had a 35-0 lead. But the good thing was too is a kid like Montrell Dobbs, who had a tremendous game the other night. He had 10 carries for 165 yards. He also returned 2 punts back for touchdowns. So, a kid like that who's having a phenomenal season for Ansonia, we were able to kind of give him a little, press and things of that nature, some sound bites for his highlight reel and things like that. That's what I thought was cool. So that was the good thing. Even though it was a blowout, we were able to call exciting thing. I was able to, call a couple of exciting plays because of what he was able to do.
Definitely, the kid's a phenomenal kid, great athlete, unbelievable to watch, and yeah, it's great to be able to, media is a little hard for a teenager. I remember I was watching one of the CPTV documentaries, and Coach Brockett was talking about how back in our day when we played in the 90s or the 80s, there was maybe two media people that would interview a kid after the game.
Yeah.
Nowadays, there's 13 or 15. That's hard
crazy
for a kid, but it is good that we're able to promote the game and and give it a little more attention, particularly in the Valley, that doesn't always get the media press that it deserves.
Right. Yeah, and, the thing of it is the goal, we did Ansonia because Ansonia's in the playoffs right now. And the other thing is, Seymour is also in the playoffs. They won the other night, as did Shelton. So all three Valley teams are moving on to a Monday night game. That's great to see that all three are still alive in the playoffs. It shows that the Valley is still strong and that, they may be small schools, not Shelton, but Ansonia and Seymour, but the Valley still has that win-in tradition. And that's the goal down the road, is to try to, give access to all the Valley teams, Derby, Shelton, Seymour, Ansonia, Oxford. That's really what we're trying to do.
Woodland, yeah. We're definitely this is a trial run for next year, I think. I think originally we were going to think about just starting next year, but we kicked it off now. But yeah, definitely we want to kind of do as much as we try to be Cable 10, we're never going to be as good as Cable 10 was back in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, but we're trying to bring it back a little bit. And but yeah, we want to try to do what's fair to all the schools. So, you and I both have regular jobs where we work on the weekends, but Friday nights are usually pretty good for us. And we'd like to be able to do a bunch of games next year of all the different towns, Woodland and Oxford included.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great thing, and I really think that it's something that's necessary, and it's also good for the people who necessarily don't want to go out to the games. I mean, it is a Friday night sometimes, and, you've worked all day, and maybe they're not going to go out to the game, but they like to know how, the teams are doing. They could kind of access this and, turn it on and kind of get a good idea of, how Seymour's doing or how Ansonia is doing.
Yeah, you have to roll with the times and roll with the changes, and we're certainly not trying to impact the draw of the games at all, or force people to not come out. But you have to roll with the times and roll with the changes, and if people are going to come out, they're going to come out, and maybe if they do listen to the first, maybe they get out of work at 7 and they can't see the first quarter, so they'll listen to in the car or something on their cell phone,
right?
So there's a million ways you could think about it, but overall, the best way to look at it is you're giving more people access to the game, as far as the fan base, which is only going to improve the game overall.
Right, and it's just it's amazing because you could see it anywhere now, too. I mean, as you know, there's just so many ways to view everything, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. They're all over the place, all these, sites to listen to these games. So, I mean, you just have so much access now that you didn't have then. And I think that's the thing. You'll see a lot of people, hopefully that'll get the interest back, because that's been the biggest thing is Valley sports really, in the last 15, 20 years hasn't had the same impact that it once did.
And I think that gives you a basic rundown of what we're trying to do. It hasn't had the impact it had back in the day, but I think we're sort of dusting off the dust a little bit on the archive of things, and bringing a little aurora, a little more flash, and a little more press or media attention, or just a little more attention overall. Get people talking about it. Everything around the Valley is, what are people talking about?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people talking about it, get more people to go to the games, get more people talking about the games, and just get that old Valley feel back.
Right, exactly. And, the other thing is we're going to take another step and try it again. Monday we're going to go back to Ansonia, and we're going to do Ansonia versus Cromwell. That'll be the semifinal of the Class S playoff game. So, I mean, we figured, why not try it again? It worked the first time, so let's go back again and do it again. So I think that's key, too, because a Monday night, again, it's not easy for everybody to go out and go to a game.
No, it's not. A lot of people work and stuff, and I think that'll be key, and for people to have access to it. Like we said, we had someone in South Carolina listening.
Yeah, which is cool. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's definitely very cool. And And yeah, I mean, we just figured, we got such a great response from everyone, and it was such a positive response. I talked to Coach Brockett after the game the next day, and I said we'd like to do it again, and he said, well, I said, did you hear anything bad or anything? He said, well, in this town, you usually hear something bad before you hear anything good. So I think you're in pretty good shape. So why don't go ahead and do it again? So we got his blessing, we got the Board of Ed's blessing,
Right.
And I think everyone's going to be real happy with it.
Yeah, I really think it's something that's good. I think it's good for kids because, again, they're the ones playing the games. They're the ones going to practice every day, and they should get some type of recognition for something, because, again, they're the ones going out there each and every week.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, the kids. And, I also just want to let people know at halftime on Monday for the Ansonia versus Cromwell game, we're going to have an interview with two former Ansonia greats, Tinny from the class of 2002 and Montrell Dobbs, who's Arkell's brother, who plays now, who's the star running back we talked about.
Right. Yeah, and they were both very good Ansonia athletes. I mean, Tinny was player of the state, I believe, in 2003. Might have been in 2002, but definitely 2003. And, Montrell Dobbs, I mean, he was such a workhorse for Ansonia. I mean, he literally, in the Derby game, carried them on his back that year. And, I mean, it'd be interesting to talk to them. And it's good to see that these former players, still come out and still come back and support their teams.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we want to highlight, too,
Right. So now let's talk about this. We talked about Cable 10, and we've been doing a project with that for the past couple of years, and that's really taken off on Comcast 10 is every Sunday, I believe, at 10 o'clock, there's a different Cable 10 game being shown. I believe this Sunday it's going to be Derby Shelton 1987, so that's really starting to take off, and that's bringing Cable 10 back because there's been a lot of kids over the years who've always wanted to see those games again.
Definitely, yeah. So, yeah, this Sunday's Derby Shelton, 1987. That's December 4th. And then December 11th is Ansonia New London, 1987. A lot of Ansonia fans will remember that game.
Right. And that would be Jack Hunt's first state title. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal game. One of the biggest ones in Ansonia history.
Right.
And then December 18th, we've got Shelton versus Sheehan, 1988. That starts the 1988 season.
Right.
And then December, Christmas Day, is Sunday, Christmas Day. It's actually Ansonia versus Shelton, 1988.
Another good game yet.
And then New Year's Day, which a lot of football games are played on New Year's Day, college games.
Yeah.
It's Derby versus Brantford, 1988.
Right. And that was a good game as well. Came right down to the wire. So, I mean, the Cable 10 thing is really, back now. I mean, at least in the archives part of it. And there's been a lot of positive reaction with that. A lot of these people on Facebook have always asked about those games. So they're getting the chance to see them again. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, there's, like you said before, what we get out of it the most is just, that it restores the tradition that's always been in Valley, Valley football, Valley sports in general. And that's basically what we've tried to do. Yeah.
And, I never, when you asked me to, help out with this stuff, I guess it was almost 2 years ago now, but, you just kind of said, hey, can you help me out? We're going to go to Comcast and see if we can convert some tapes for your Derby Athletic Hall of Fame.
Right.
I never imagined in a million years it would turn into this huge, massive media package that we've turned it into. But I'm glad it did. It's really a great thing, and people are loving it, and it's been phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the thing I think I get out of it the most is the fact that it gives you an opportunity to see somebody play that you heard about or read about, and you didn't get to see them play. When Jack Hunt gave us the Ansonia library, a few years back, you'd hear about these great players, but you never got to see Sandy Olszewski play or, John Pagliaro play or, anybody might think of. And yet now you get to see these guys play because of this. And I think that's the greatest thing. And it's good for those people that are still living because their kids or grandkids could see this and see that, their fathers and grandfathers were once teenage kids like they are, and they kind of get to see, what kind of legacy they left.
Yeah, it's really a great thing to be able to archive memories like that. And if anyone has tapes that's out there that is looking to get them converted, we'll convert them for you. If particularly pre-1985 stuff.
Right.
If you have any Cable 10 games from the 70s or anything like that, we'll convert them for you, give you copies and stuff as long as we can archive them.
Yeah, I mean, that's important. It really is. I mean, it's important because, again, that's really when football took off in the Valley too, and I think that's important that those guys should have something that they could go back and, kind of relive a little bit because you have to go forward, but at the same time, you should be able to go back a little bit and kind of reflect things back on your childhood, things like that. And I think that's important. Like I said, it's very important for, whether it's their wives or their kids to be able to see, what they did when they were younger and things like that. That's very important.
Yeah, and we've talked to a lot of the coaches. I know Coach French in Derby and, Coach Brogan in Ansonia. They watch these games on Sundays, and
right.
I'm sure they're getting ideas and things and saying, oh, that worked in, 87. Look, maybe we could try something similar, switch it up, make it our own type thing, because some of these teams are still running similar plays, so
right.
Not obviously there's new coaching staffs and stuff like that, but there's always ideas. Coaches are always looking for like data and like ways to try new things. So
right.
I think a lot of these coaches, they respect the history of the game. So that's part of it. They want to see what they couldn't see back then or whatever.
Right.
But also they're looking for stuff to feed their their monsters.
Exactly.
So.
Let me ask you this: is, as we mentioned, we did the audio part of it. Is there a goal to do the TV part of it, or would you say right now the audio one is more realistic?
Yeah. Well, I think for this year, there's not many games left, but I think we'll stick with audio for now, and I think we could really probably use a little bit at least one more crew member if we're going to go video.
Right.
I think I could probably pull it off, the first time, but maybe if we could find someone to announce with you or something, and I could take care of the technical side, the production side, or we'll figure it out next year. But I think there's potential for the video. There's a little equipment investment. I think I'm going to have to spend about maybe $500 to get this one device.
Right.
It's called the VDU, or live stream broadcaster type device.
Right.
But there's a little bit of that involved. But I think overall, there's definitely plenty of potential.
Oh yeah,
for
definitely.
Video. Well, I think initially one camera. We just set it up in the press box, kind of go up and down the field. As far as a multi-camera situation,
that might be a little hard.
That's a little complicated of being just volunteers. Like I said, we're not a huge corporation like Cable 10 was back in the day. But I'm not saying that's not possible. I'm just saying we would probably need some type of, we would need a whole different setup for that.
Right. You mentioned at the half, we're going to interview Kenny, Tinny, and our Montrell Dobbs. That's the thing too. Is sometimes the halftime part of it is, the halftime goes for a good 20 minutes, so you need that time to, put something in there. So I think that's good. And I think even interviewing a fan, somebody who's a fan of the programs, that's key too, because, they could talk about why they love the games, things like that. Really what we're doing, it's not just, football per se. It's kind of like, keeping the Valley alive in that sense, that anybody that loves the Valley, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, keep the Valley strong. And, I've said this many times, when the Evening Sentinel died, I thought a little bit of the Valley died. And, they've done things to restore the Sentinel a little bit. You have the Valley Independent Sentinel. But, losing that newspaper was a big blow. And, I think that's another thing, too. That was always where people in the Valley got their recognition, got the press, was that Sentinel. And when that was gone, I think that hurt high school sports in general.
Yeah, it definitely did. There's something about collecting a scrapbook and having all your team's highlights or your own highlights in a scrapbook.
Right.
And maybe I'm dating we're dating ourselves a little bit here, but everything's kind of done on Facebook nowadays with that kind of thing. But you don't get to hold it in your hand. I mean, yeah, you can print it out, but how many people actually print out a picture or an article themselves that's online? They just Google it or whatever. So yeah, the Sentinel was phenomenal. Dana Tinty and those cartoons that he used to do were just unbelievable. And hats off to Ethan and Eugene here at the Valley Independent for valleyindy.org for doing what they do. Putting it's a labor of love in a lot of ways for them too, and hats off to them for keeping it alive.
Right, definitely.
Buy some ads.
Buy some ads.
Or we're gonna go the way of the Sentinel.
The other thing is, you talk about the football games, but one of the projects you took on the last 2 years too is you've converted a lot of old NVL basketball games. You've kind of hooked up with Lenny Kravitz and done that stuff. So I mean, talk about that, because that's a challenge too, correct?
Yeah. We actually kind of finished up that project recently, although he's still accepting stragglers. But yeah, it's called. There's a group on Facebook. I think you have to be invited, but it's called NVL Basketball Alumni. But there's a public YouTube page called NVL Basketball Alumni, I think it's called. And I mean, we've talked about this before. It's I think there's over 400 games up on that YouTube channel.
That's unbelievable.
That I converted for him, and it's just it's a phenomenal thing to have that many games. The majority of them are from the Waterbury schools. The Holy Crosses, the Sacred Hearts.
Right.
Mostly from a collection that Ed Generali had, the longtime coach of Holy Cross, and I think he coached the Sacred Heart for a little while. But yeah, it's a huge. There's some Crosby games in there. There's some Watertown. There's some Seymour. There's some Ansonia, and whoever these teams played as well. So yeah, it's a huge collection.
Yeah, and the one thing that has been great about it is you'd grew up with Lenny. You went to grammar school with him, high school with him, but you really hadn't seen him much over the years. And then kind of when this project took on, you spent a lot of time with him, converting things, editing things. So, I mean, it kind of, renewed your friendship a little bit too.
It certainly did. It was great to reconnect with Lenny. I've known Lenny since I was, it must have been about 5th or 6th grade, something like that. And so maybe like 10 years old or something like that.
Right.
We were playing on the charter host team. But, yeah, it was great to reconnect with him, and we worked on a different project. I was focused on football in high school, so I didn't get to play basketball.
Right.
Even though Lenny tried to recruit me senior year. So it was really good to work on a basketball project, a high school basketball project that I didn't get to work on in high school with Lenny. One of the arguably one of the greatest guys to ever play basketball.
Yeah, he was a very good player. Yeah. I think those things are important. It really is, because for a kid who loves basketball, again, he should be able to look back and have some, archives of his playing career, and that's important too. Now, talk about, as you mentioned, we had produced that documentary on the Ansonia Derby game. We talked about it, but it finally aired recently, and it aired on a Tuesday night, and then there was a screening the next day at the Derby Library. Talk about the reaction to that and after it was finally put together.
Oh, it was a great reaction. I think a lot of people were anticipating it. I think when we let the trailer go, and after, Eugene was so gracious enough to have us on Naval Gazing here on the valleyindy.org, there was a big response. There was a lot of comments on valleyindy.org on the article, and people loved it.
Yeah, they really did. Yeah.
Yeah, they really loved it, and the response was great. And I would say it accomplished what we tried to accomplish,
Right.
What I loved probably the most about it was that when come game time in the first quarter, the game was tied 8-8.
Yeah.
Now I don't want to, I don't want to. Those coaches, they worked hard, and those players worked hard. But I'd like to think we added a little hype to the game to help make it a more exciting game.
Yeah, you would hope so. I mean, at the end of the day, Ansonia was just a better team than Derby, and it showed afterwards. But it was good to see after Ansonia had come all the way down and scored, Derby came right back and scored. It gave you some hope in that first quarter that it could be a good game. And, there was some juice that night in the, Lou D. Filippo Field. There definitely was. Is it going to bring it totally back? I don't think so, but you just got to, you take what you could get right now. You got to take baby steps.
Definitely, and I think one of the things we talked about on the podcast, on the Valley the Valley Rewind / Naval Gazing podcast was, if it's a close game, more people will come to the game.
Right.
And that's kind of what happened. It was 8-8, and people found out online or whatever it was 8-8, and I noticed, all of a sudden more and more people started coming to the game after it was 8-8.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, it got ugly after that. It wasn't a close game, and it was unfortunate. Derby just was outmanned, but for a good first quarter, at least, it gave you some hope that there could be a game. And I think that's really what the documentary was all about, was trying to get these younger kids to see, and the older people that, played or went to these games, that keep that rivalry alive. Don't let it die, because it's a great rivalry, and it's about two small schools who have always, while they've hated each other on the field, they've always had a mutual respect for one another off the field.
Yeah, it really is, and you can find that documentary if you Google Ansonia versus Derby the game, or if you just go to Ansonia Derby Classic Football on Facebook or YouTube.
Right. What's your long-term goal for all of these projects? Really, what is the biggest goal that you want out of it?
Wow. Well, I think I'm a go-getter, and I set high goals, and I figure if you just fall a little bit short, that's okay. But ultimately, I think in a lot of ways I've reached the expectations I've had. This stuff has exceeded my expectations in many ways.
Right.
But I think ultimately, my goal would just be that things get moving again here, and the hawk of the town starts getting more about these games and about Valley sports, and
right,
and a little more talk. I'd like to see a little more online conversation. There's starting. I think we're still kind of getting the word out that we're doing this. I think a lot of people know, but I think to the masses, people are still learning that we're doing this. But I'd like to see a little more discussion on Facebook, on various pages and on the Ansonia Derby Classic Football page. But the ultimate goal is to just get people talking about it.
Right. Do you get discouraged when you don't see people talking about it like you would hope? I know after the documentary, you thought in the beginning people would talk a little more than they did, and there wasn't a lot of chatter right after it. So, does that bother you, or do you take it as, well, maybe they didn't like it, or do you just think sometimes people just don't care?
I was talking to Tinny about this, who was in the documentary, and I had said, I wish more people would talk about it online on Facebook and stuff, and on YouTube or whatever. And he said, and I was about to say something else, and then I think he or I said it before the other one did, and we said, it's the way the Valley is. People talk to each other. They don't post on Facebook or
Right.
or they call each other on the phone or something and say, they're not always, and people aren't always public too. That's the other thing,
Right. I mean, I just think sometimes too, there's things going on. Not everybody's able to view Facebook like they like. And, I'll give you a good example. I saw a couple likes today about it, and this thing aired about a month ago, and now you're seeing likes about it today. So, I mean, I think it's when people could get to it and they could kind of view it. But I do know a lot of people asked when was it going to be on YouTube after it was shown. A guy I'll bring up is Jim Lewis. He's a guy who went to Derby High. He played in the Derby Ansonia rivalry. And he was asking me, when's this going to come on? And then he commented to me after it came on. He gave me positives. He gave me negatives. He was, very honest. And I think that's very important. And I like that he took the time to watch it. He lives, down south now. So he's not around like he was, but he still keeps in touch with the Valley and still keeps an eye on things.
Yeah, and big shout out to Jim Lewis and all those Derby people that are real supportive of our efforts. Like Dan Shea, Rob Heider, Mike Jadek, some other people. Greg Soldier is always very supportive of what we're doing.
Right.
Really appreciate his support and some of the other people like Will Rivard, who's down in Florida.
Right.
He's always very, very supportive of what we're doing. We really appreciate that. And really everyone that's come on any of these shows and has been so supportive of what we're doing, because that's what makes it worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
Knowing that people are enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's really what you try to get out of it. For the longest time, I've told you, I mean, there hasn't been a lot of talk, and, you feel bad for what, the towns became afterwards. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I just mean that the interest in sports, high school sports, kind of died for a while. But you want, these young kids who are playing right now, because if you don't give them a history of what they're playing for, they're not going to ever understand what's behind Derby football, what's behind Ansonia football, what's behind Seymour basketball, or what's behind, Shelton baseball, whatever the case might be. You have to be able to give them some type of history about the programs they play for, or else it's never going to work.
Definitely. And I remember, being in high school and playing and stuff and having an appreciation for guys like Vinny Drake and Alan Webb, these guys that played for Ansonia back in like the 40s and the 30s.
Right.
And I just remember, wanting to do something then, to make people remember, about those people that played back then. And for a program and a Valley sports, sort of community that gave so much to me as a player, it feels really good to give something back to the community.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it's all about. And again, like I said, people were very supportive of it. They've been supportive of everything, even, like I said, the Derby Athletic Hall of Fame we started, there's been tremendous support. A couple people the other night, not so much on Facebook, which I'm not going to get into, but otherwise it's been great. And that's the whole idea behind it, is just, keeping the traditions alive, because you don't want, if you went to that school and you had pride in that school, you don't want to see that school be an afterthought. You want them to stay relevant. You don't want it to be something that nobody even thinks about anymore, or things of that nature. And like I said, when we had the Derby Athletic Hall of Fame event, we had 200 people. So right there tells you that people still care. I think people just need an interest. And I think, if Derby could get good again and, just compete with Ansonia, people will go to the games. But I think that's ultimately how you get people to any type of event. Look at Seymour. Seymour had a down 5 years. When Coach Sponheimer left, it took them about 5 years to get it back, but now they're back. This is the second straight year they're in the playoffs. They're in the semis. It'd be very cool to see Ansonia and Seymour play in the Class S final. That would be great for the Valley. People would love that. But all it takes, really, like nothing else, if the teams are successful, the fans will come out. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think that's what everybody in the Valley's hoping for is Seymour Ansonia final. Wouldn't that be great? That'd be like the old Ansonia Derby finals and stuff like that. That would be phenomenal. But there's still plenty of time for that. There's games to be won before that can happen.
Right. But basically, if they both win their games on Monday night, they're both going to see each other on Saturday, and that's going to be. That's going to be a crazy week in the Valley. It's really going to be something awesome, and I think the fans are going to love it. And, it gives Seymour another chance to get at Ansonia. They did not play very well against Ansonia when they played them. It was pretty much over by the half. And I know they would probably want another shot, so it gives them another shot. And it just motivates Ansonia more to get that 20th championship because they're playing their, league rival, their Valley rival, and that, could really make it a great event on that Saturday.
Yeah, and I think you'd get a big, Seymour brought a lot of people to that Ansonia.
Yes, they did. They really did.
They really, brought quite a few people, and there was quite a few fans there. So I think if that ends up in a final game, a championship game, that will really, really bring a good crowd there for that game, and that will be traditional classic Valley sports.
Right. Did you ever think when you graduated high school in 1995 that here we are 2016 that you'd be having such a big hand in all this stuff, the archives of Cable 10 games, the archives of the NVL basketball games, doing different things, different projects, doing an Ansonia Derby documentary. Could you ever have imagined it?
I remember, I think we must have been about sophomores and maybe freshmen. And I remember having a discussion with you, and I said, when we get old, we're going to be like those old guys on the hill and a bunch of old farts just talking about Valley sports and stuff like that. But, never in a million years did I imagine that we'd be doing something like this or that it would turn into something like this.
Yeah, it's really been it's been great. I have no complaints about it. Sometimes it's work and, sometimes that could be tedious, but when you see the finished product, you really smile and know that all the hard work was worth it.
I think as long as the community's still happy with it and as long as we have the ability to do it, I think we'll keep doing it.
All right. Sounds good. I want to thank you for coming on today, Sean. I think these projects are awesome. I think they're going to continue to, develop, and things are only going to get better for high school sports, and I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks a lot, and go Valley Sports.
And that was Sean Morse. I'm Mike Cannici for Valley Sports Rewind saying goodbye, everyone.